Hello, this is Corey Yarborough, the Executive Director of the Hispanic Black Gay Coalition, here for another installment of our HBGC mayoral video series. Today, I am in South Boston on a beautiful Saturday morning at the campaign headquarters for Mike Ross. Mike Ross is currently a Boston City Council member. He's been serving on the Boston City Council since 1999. He's a former president of the Boston City Council and is currently the chair of the Public Safety Committee. Today, I'm here to talk to him about education, policing of communities of color, health disparities, senior care for LGBT people, as well as other things that are central to his platform for Mayor of Boston. Councilor Ross, thank you so much.
Great to be here.
To meet with me. So I just want to go ahead and hop into some questions to talk about your campaign and your vision for a smarter Boston. As I was looking at your brochure earlier today, I think something that stands out is how you introduce yourself on the brochure, which is Mike is a first-generation American, his father is a Holocaust survivor, and his mother is a 71-year-old proud and openly gay woman. So I'm curious as to why you're so passionate about sharing that unique side of yourself and how that has contributed to your platform of fighting oppression.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Thanks for coming by today on a Saturday. It's a little more casual today. I hope that's all right. You know, we all come from somewhere. We all come from our experiences, and so usually when you try to introduce yourself to people, you kind of start with your parents, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, I mean, my father and mother had a huge influence on how I wound up in this job and how I wound up with the values that I have. My dad was a Holocaust survivor. He taught me we all have a duty to create a more just and equal world. Mm-hmm. You know, he's a first generation, I'm a first generation American by definition. He is an immigrant to this country, mm-hmm. So through his story, you know, I have come to learn of the American dream and live the American dream. Mm-hmm. And I truly believe that it's something that needs to be available for everyone. I learned that from my father. My mother's experiences taught me that, you know, she's taught me this just being my mother and being someone who was very active and influential in my life. But mm-hmm. her story, you know, being an openly gay woman a long time ago, mm-hmm. Is, you know, at a time when it wasn't everyone marching in gay pride parades, at a time when there was no marriage equality, at a time, you know, even before DOMA was even created, right? Mm-hmm. At a time when people were very quiet. You know, it's really a story of strength about her, but, you know, has helped inform me that we don't judge people by how they look, you know, or who they love, but how they treat other people. So that's the foundation. So if people are choosing a mayor in this election, they kind of want to get a sense of, you know, what are the values of this person? And for me, the values are, you know, we're all equal, and we're all, you know, trying to make it in this world, and we need to help each other. We need to care for each other. So that's kind of how I usually start when I introduce myself, and that's where I started on this piece right here.
So the last time I saw you was at a Boston City Council hearing for the senior LGBT community. Yeah. And I imagine your mom had a great deal of influence on why you're so passionate about the senior LGBT community. But tell me a little bit more, as mayor, what you intend to do to serve that community.
Yeah, I mean, issues of equality don't go away once you pass the bill or once you win the fight or once the court is over. You know, issues of equality for all people, but for LGBT community as well, are persistent. They're always there. And so it's always what's next, what's next. I am in the business of what's next. Our business is never done in government. There's always going to be some other opportunity we have to create, or some other challenge we have to unwind, or some other hurdle we have to, you know, pass. And anything we do, in schools, in economic development, and in equality around people. So for me, I think the two biggest issues facing our LGBT elders, or facing the LGBT community, for me, after talking to the community and really being on the forefront of issues of equality, I think there's two big issues. One is aging seniors, especially in this city, in this country, where that demographic is now becoming the demographic. Baby boomers aging into housing, and youth in terms of questioning and what's happening with curriculum and what's happening in schools, and needing to catch up to where people are. We're not there either. So I think on both ends, interestingly, of the spectrum, there are these kind of two immediate challenges for the community. Of course, what's happening at the State House as well around transgender legislation that's up there, and there's a lot of great work being done up at the State House, and there's a good fight up there that the City Council is supporting. But on our doorstep, there's these two very important issues. And the issue of, and I'm very close to the different senior groups that are organizing around these issues that I've been meeting with and been collaborating and working with. And you have seniors who have been on the forefront of, people like my mother who have been, thankfully my mother and Cheryl are, they're in Gloucester, they're very happy. My mom's not in any kind of senior housing. She's probably the most spry 71-year-old woman I've ever met. But there are people in her cohort, in her age demographic, that are now looking or starting to consider housing, and that have been on the forefront of great fights around equality, and finding themselves that culturally they're having to recloset themselves because of their caregiver may not be accepted, because they may live next door to someone who's not accepting, because it's harder when you're older to redefine yourself, reintroduce yourself.
So if I could just hop in there. So, given all those different dynamics that can come into play, what will be your solution for dealing with that? Is it more passing more, anti-discrimination type policies? Is it dealing with the cultural stigma of it all? Is it just providing more resources and services to provide, the senior community with options?
Yeah, it's all. First of all, it's identifying the issue. We need to know where are we with our housing. There's, in the city of Boston, there's only so many, elder housings out there that the Public Health Commission has a sense of where they are, and our licensing, our inspectional services department has a sense of where they are. So, how are they managing this issue, this problem? So it's identifying the problem, it's measuring the problem, and then it's determining what solutions are needed. I think it's just probably going to be some level of, activism, marketing, kind of outreach, a small campaign by our Public Health Commission to try to be out in those places and where people are and say, hey, listen, whether you're black, white, old, young, Jewish, Muslim, gay, straight, these are your, senior, we need to allow people to age with dignity and treat people fairly. Some campaign, something, to really make sure that that's happening. Okay. And then, if it needs to go to the next level, if we're finding that it's not working and that we have to involve laws or, more kind of, deliberate action, then we'll do that too.
Yeah, and when you talk about tough decisions, I often think of the diversity of the city, because you have to take so many different communities, so many different special interests in mind, and you represent one of the most diverse districts in Boston, District 8. So I guess where I'm headed with that is, how, given that diversity, will you continue as mayor to make those tough decisions and keep into consideration now beyond your district what's important for the city as a whole and what's important for the underrepresented people in the city?
Yeah, we need to be better represented in all areas of the city. Our government, our police department, our school teachers need to look like and reflect the people they're teaching, serving, protecting. I'd ask you to look at our office staffs. Look at all the office staffs of all the people who are running for office right now. And I'm very proud of the diversity of my staff. It's easy to tell people what you're going to do. It's hard to change what you've done. And so I've had, in my 14 years, proud to have had 2 African-American male chief of staffs, and to always have a bilingual staff and always have someone that can speak Spanish, so that if someone calls and speaks Spanish, there's someone there to answer. That's how I'll move forward. I think it's critical that our police department reflect the people that we serve. It's not acceptable that our superintendents, the superintendents, top brass of the police department, that there's not a single woman in those ranks. And it's not acceptable that our police captains, there's not a single person of color. That will change under me. I believe that for a police department to work and to function and to be able to get critical information from the community they serve, they're going to have to look like and reflect who they serve. And I think if kids are learning in our schools, they really have to have male role models, because there's not enough teachers who are male, or African American, or African American and male.
And gay.
And gay.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They need to see that it's okay to be, you know, a gay African American male in the classroom, because there are going to be gay African American kids coming out of those schools, and we need to have examples. So yes, you need the most qualified people, you know, absolutely, but we have to look harder and work harder to make sure that we're finding people who look like the city.
Back up to policing a bit and talk about that a bit more, because diversity or diversifying the police force is a huge part of that platform for you. And I want to read two other things from your website for increasing policing in communities. One is to increase the number of police satellite stations, and the other is increase technology to make policing more mobile. So tell me a little bit more about why you want to do that. Is that an approach to keep our community safer, to reduce crime? Why is this a huge part of your platform?
In 2013, or in what will be 2014, you know, I think the policing, we don't need to keep having police go back to the departments. I don't want to see police in headquarters. I don't want to see police in their departments. I want to see them in the community. I want to see them on the street. I want to see them walking the beat. I want to see them driven out into the neighborhoods. That's where I want to see our police. You know, I want to see them, I want people to see them. You know, that is a great deterrent to have people. Now, I think the best way to make neighborhoods safe is for you and I to be using them well into the evening. This notion that we have neighborhoods that shut down at 7 p.m., 5 p.m., there's nothing to do, go places to see, you know, that we have to work on. That's building neighborhoods. We can talk more about that when we talk about economic development and community development. That's how you keep neighborhoods safe. That's how you keep parks safe. But police have a critical role in keeping neighborhoods and parks safe and people safe as well. And they don't if you don't see them. So let's bring them out of the departments. Anything that they should need at their desk, we should be able to provide them in their hands. Anything that they should be able to need, you know, beyond that, we should be able to make available through satellite stations, so that there's enough of, you know, there are places that they can check in, there are places that they can recharge, you know, but let's keep them in the neighborhood. That's the whole purpose of this.
Yeah, ironically, you know, HBGC has been doing a lot around law enforcement this year, and I think everything from a survey that we did on domestic violence that proved that there's a genuine mistrust and fear of law enforcement when wanting to get support for domestic violence. And to give another example, most recently in Dudley Square, there was a rally with about the George Zimmerman verdict, where a lot of people were talking about mistrust of police, uncomfort around increased policing in their neighborhoods. So what would you say to those community members who, when they see maybe a new satellite station in their neighborhood, they're more apprehensive or thinking they're going to be targeted?
Well, I mean, I'd go back to our earlier conversation. I mean, it's critical that there's trust among the community and the police. That's the only way this works. And so you're going to have a police department that earns that trust. The way that you'll get that trust, sure, people have to look like the people they're serving. So we have to make sure we're hiring people that look like and come from the neighborhood, not just look like, but come from the streets. Yeah, I've said that police have to care about the streets of the neighborhood as much as the person living in that community for their whole lives, because those very police people should be the people that have been living in that community their whole lives. They should be from the community. But to establish trust with people, you need to talk to people. There'll never be trust if we're not talking to each other. Okay. You know, so I'm working right now with some ministers and some gang-involved youth around this very issue. And what it always comes down to is communication. And so, you know, if people look at cruisers and satellite police stations and increased presence of police as a bad thing, we are totally failing. Totally failing. And there needs to be a real trust rebuilt. If that's what people are thinking, then we really have to work on that. And I will.
And I think unavoidably tied to the issue of policing is the issue of race. So I want to talk a little bit about where you feel race relations in Boston are. And I think I'll start there. That would be the end of the question. How would you currently describe race relations in Boston?
Not where they need to be.
Okay.
We've come a long way, and under the last 20 years under Tom Menino, we're a better city. But we're still a city that if you want to, go out to a restaurant in some neighborhoods, you very well may see all white people. Or if you want to go out to a neighborhood and a restaurant in some other neighborhood, you very well may see all black people or all people of color. We got to stop this. We got to start kind of being where we are with each other. So here's my theory on this. Obviously what you have is in some neighborhoods you have great schools, and other neighborhoods you don't. We have to make sure that we go to the schools that are failing, that are not connecting, and we make them better so that more people want to go to those schools, so that more people will be drawn into that community. But it's not enough to just deal with schools. You have to, if you have a neighborhood where no one wants to go to, right? If there's nowhere to really go after 5 p.m., 6 p.m., then, how are we going to get people into each other's neighborhoods? And so I represent the Fenway. The Fenway was gas station, parking lot, fast food restaurant. Our community got together, replanned the neighborhood. It was a real good planning process. And today it's a different neighborhood, 2 million square feet of development, $2 billion invested, Fenway Community Health, on-site affordability, thousands of units. It's just a different place. People go there now for much more for just a ball game. They go there to visit, to shop, to recreate, to do things. I believe there are neighborhoods across the city that can happen in. And I'm not just talking about, in fact, I'm not talking at all about gentrifying those neighborhoods. What I'm talking about is building those neighborhoods from within, getting together, planning those neighborhoods, building housing, making sure we create on-site affordability, inclusionary zoning, right? So 15, 13, 20% of the housing that gets built is set aside for affordable and working class housing, so that we don't just gentrify those neighborhoods. And then through those housings, through those offices, through those other purposes and use and development, you'll be able to see retail, you'll be able to see supermarkets. I think check cashing places have to be replaced with community serving banks that invest in people and invest in the community, and that food deserts have to be replaced with supermarkets, places to get healthy food for your family and for your individuals, and gathering places like restaurants have to occur. I think restaurants have become the new ambassadors for neighborhoods. A restaurant says, welcome, come visit, come to our community and visit. I think when we build up those neighborhoods, when every neighborhood in the city of Boston, and this will be my pledge, that during my time in office, I will bring back those neighborhoods, building on the work that Tom Menino has done, so that they're places that we all want to go and visit. People will want to go to Franklin Park Zoo, linger, and then stay on Blue Hill Avenue and Columbia Road and go out to dinner afterwards, well into the evening. And that's how we're going to bring back so that's, you see what I'm saying? There's going to be a reason to be in everyone's neighborhood. It's going to be education, but it's also going to be in building back those communities.
And my last question on this is, can you just speak a little bit more to challenging the culture of Boston and some of the discrimination that could happen, right? Because again, I think, you could want to start a business, or you could want to take out a loan to pursue a dream, but you may be faced with discrimination or people who don't want to invest in you because of who you are, the community you come from, how do you present yourself. So while the options can be there, I think as well, it can be challenging just to get your foot in the door because of who you are. So as mayor, what can you do? What will you try to do to change that culture of Boston?
We have to make it easier to open business and do business in the city of Boston. We have to make it much easier to permit and to go forward with what people are trying to do. This city can't stand in the way of people's dreams in terms of opening up their new businesses or doing things that are creative or different. Boston, by definition, for 400 years has allowed for innovation and reinvention and just, people with great new ideas and concepts to come into the marketplace and do brilliant things. First public library, high school, we were at the start of the revolution, the heart of the abolitionist movement. We were really a start of the digital revolution, startup revolution, innovation, medical, everything, research, biomed, medical devices. We're really at the heart of all those innovations and all those things. Our city government can't stand in the way of the next wave of that. And we are. You know, it shouldn't take 6 to 9 months to open up a small business in the city of Boston. There's a yogurt store that I have in my district in the Back Bay. It took a year to permit this yogurt store and to open it. If we can't open you in 30 days, we should give you your fees back. We should want those things to open as much as you do, because it's jobs, it's revenues, it's amenities, it's things that make a city great. I mean, these are things we should all want. And whether it's some pushcart vendor, food truck, you know, or some brick and mortar store that wants to, you know, or party or event or street closing or any of the things that like really bring out the best in us. We have to make all those things easier to do. You know, and in terms of, you know, in our communities, it's not fair and it's not right that there aren't restaurant permits available, that if you want one, it's going to cost $300,000. You can't spend $300,000 to bring a beer and wine or liquor license into a restaurant in the community and try to finance that project. I've proposed and will make available empowerment restaurant licenses that can only leave they can never leave the neighborhood in which they're put in. So we'll go to the State House, we'll get 25, 50 licenses. We'll put them into the communities that cannot be sold and moved outside of. And we'll open restaurants there. And we'll make it easier to do so. So we really have to make it easier. We have to meet people where they are. I'm the guy that brought food trucks to Boston, right? This was something that was totally different, radically different. And, you know, but I really believe that, you know, the best thing that I can have in my business is an idea and a fearlessness to implement that idea. When Boston Common kind of started to fall in disrepair, that's my district, the Boston Common, I represent that park, America's oldest park. I asked my favorite question, which was, how do we make this park, so I asked my favorite question, which was, who's doing this better than we are right now? And how do we find, now Paris is doing this better than we are, but we can go to Paris. So we went to New York, and we studied what they did and brought back and implemented, you know, that in the Boston Common. And to me, that's what we need to do. We have to be unafraid to point to other people's work or ideas and say, hey, you know, maybe they're doing it better. Let's borrow that idea. Tip O'Neill said this 30, 40, 50 years ago. He said, you can get anything done if you're willing to let someone else get the credit. And I took those words to heart. And then for years in my, you know, whether it's been food trucks or meeting with Jeffrey Canada or at the Harlem Children's Zone or figuring out how to use our parks differently or just kind of bringing new ideas into the city, I've been unafraid to point to other people and say, hey, they're doing it over here. Why don't we do it over here?
So the last topic I want to talk about today is health disparities. And according to the Department of Public Health, the LGBT community, particularly the transgender community, have the worst self-reported health outcomes. And, you know, that covers a variety of things from diabetes to substance abuse to suicide rates to just going to a primary care physician on a regular basis. So what will be your approach for helping our community, as in the Black, Latino, LGBT community, access healthcare, access quality healthcare in a way where we feel comfortable and safe?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I would, you know, I have always believed that there are people out there who are smarter and who know this more than I do, and I've always been unafraid to engage and tap them. I've always hired people who really draw from expertise beyond my own in the areas that they can represent. And I've learned so much from those partners and those people who support us. I will drive decision making out into the community. I will engage people who are experts in this area and have them help reform some of the areas that we need to and open new doors that don't exist today. I will rely heavily on the people like, for example, at the Fenway Community Health Center, people who have really started, you know, who I know better than I think any of my colleagues who are running, because they've been in my district for 14 years that I've represented. They've been there much longer, but I've represented the district for 14 years. I will enlist them and have them tell me what we need to do, and we will do it as a community. And it won't be the top-down approach that, you know, you might think that I'm talking about. It will be the bottom-up approach to say, how do we fix this? How do we once and for all make sure that, you know, access really means access? I know the folks at Fenway and beyond, and you know, some of the people that I think are plugged into your network as well, can be real advocates for this kind of for those next barriers that we really have to pull down, and the access that we have to make available.
So I want to end now with what I call my lightning round. So it's just 4 quick questions, and I just want you to finish the sentence, in 3 or 4 words.
Okay.
All right. So the first one is, a more just and equal Boston requires.
All of us.
A personal hero of mine is.
My parents.
An area I am looking to improve in as a leader is.
Maybe patience for the rate of change, right? I mean, I want everything. I feel like there are kids out there who, they don't have years. Mm-hmm. They don't have 5 years for us to reform our schools. They need us right now. Mm-hmm. And yet there are some things I'm talking about doing that will take a couple of years, a few years, 5 years. That patience I need to work on, because there are certain things that are going to have to grow seeds and sprout. So I have to have patience for that.
And finally, to the Black and Latino LGBT community, I pledge.
To continue to live up to the commitments that I've made, as a district city councilor. So I urge people, so I pledge to bring back neighborhoods that aren't where any of us want them to be, to make sure there's equality and a lack of disparity, that there's actual kind of parity when it comes to our schools and comes to the resources that we all need and need to rely on. And I pledge to work with you. I pledge to work with you in the most meaningful of those words mean. Truly work with you for the community-based approach to problem solving.
Thank you so much. So, again, tell us how to get involved with your campaign or anything you want to leave with our people.
Yeah, the best thing to do is to go to mike4boston.com. We really would love to include you in this campaign. I mean, what I've been talking about here all day today is community-based kind of problem solving. And there's no better way for you to see how that works than to get involved in my campaign. I promise, if you email us, we'll plug you into what we're doing. We'll get you working, and you'll see just how easy it is to collaborate and work with me. And when you come into the campaign headquarters, which we're sitting in right now, we'll hang out. We got a ping pong table out there. I'll play a few rounds of ping pong with you. So please get involved. This is an important election. This is the first mayor's race in 20 years, the first open mayor's race in 30 years, and this is your city. We need you.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.